Dear brothers and sisters, I greet you in faith, hope, and love as we continue our response to the pandemics of HIV, TB, and now COVID-19. As people of faith, we affirm having been created in the image and likeness of God, and thus are called to enjoy rights and fulfill responsibilities as God's children, and to take care of our common home. I'm happy to join you during this Interfaith Conference, given my previous service as founding director of the African Jesuit AIDS Network and my present service at the Migrants and Refugees section at the Vatican. My thanks and compliments to the UNAIDS PEPFAR Faith Initiative and to the religious and faith-based leaders, groups, and communities that have organized this event. I'd like to talk about 4 priority objectives. First, to increase access. Like me, most older participants will vividly recall when there was no treatment for HIV. We provided palliative care, pastoral support, comfort for the bereaved, and protection for the massive numbers of orphans left behind. Resilience and renewal were rarely mentioned. But the advent of effective antiretroviral medications was a dramatic change. We now see people resiliently living with HIV and renewing their own lives, as well as their family and community relationships. We witness their active participation and creative genius in shaping the world of the present and of the future. As Pope Francis said recently in the context of COVID-19, contemplating the world in the light of faith, we strive to develop our creativity and enthusiasm in order to resolve the ordeals of the past. Great progress has been made. Much more access to early diagnosis and treatment and antiretroviral coverage, lower prices, voluntary sharing of intellectual property among researchers and generic manufacturers. Yet we cannot be complacent. The latest UNAIDS report on the AIDS pandemic, released in July 2020, showed that over 12 million of the 38 million people living with the infection are still not accessing this treatment. And let us not forget the children living with HIV. While mother-to-child transmission is decreasing, there's little progress in ending childhood HIV infection. I'm deeply grateful for the work of Cardinal Peter Turkson and the Vatican's Dicastery for Promoting Integral Human Development, together with several intergovernmental agencies, governments, and religious-based organizations, to expand access to pediatric HIV medicines and diagnostics and increase research and development of child-friendly diagnostics and treatment. Stakeholders are reporting progress against a well-articulated work plan. But more focused attention to pediatric HIV is needed in the wider public health community, especially since children cannot advocate and monitor for themselves. Moreover, let us not focus only on HIV when tuberculosis continues to be a principal cause of morbidity and mortality among people living with HIV. There is progress in integrating services to address both infections, but too many governments and funding agencies still insist on separate financing and even separate testing and treatment programs. And let us open our minds beyond co-infection. Thinking of what HIV/AIDS advocacy achieved regarding the various programs of action agreed at the special UN sessions on HIV/AIDS, let us strive now for more focused attention to the global plan that emerged from the first ever UN high-level session on TB in 2018. Second, to promote human rights and responsibilities. Many of us engaged in earlier responses to the HIV pandemic were deeply disturbed while HIV treatment was reserved to the privileged few who could afford the astoundingly high prices at the time. Fortunately, the voices of persons living with HIV were finally heard in the early 2000s, and special funding mechanisms made these treatments available to many more who needed them. A strong plank in our advocacy platforms was, and continues to be, a belief in the right to health care for all. In 2018, on the first World Day for Universal Health Care, Pope Francis wrote to Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus, Director General of the World Health Organization. He said, "Access to health care is a means of fostering the value of justice and the common good, and of everyone in particular. Conscious of her mission at the service of human beings created by God, the Catholic Church cooperates with international organizations in the promotion of the dignity of each person and in assisting every individual to benefit from the right to health care in accordance with the principles of subsidiarity and solidarity." At this point, I would like to propose that we amend this objective to include responsibilities in our promotion of human rights. Human rights tend to get conceived and promoted solely from an individualistic perspective, something that is due to me and that I possess for my own enjoyment or self-interest. This can clash with the faith-based understanding that all of our life, our dignity, and our rights represent a gift from God. Faith nourishes the realization that every right comes with a concomitant responsibility to care for my family, my community, my brothers and sisters, and myself in the worldwide human family. Both now and future generations need to be included, and to care for this earth, our common home. When our rights are not understood and exercised in a responsible manner, we jeopardize the health of all God's creation. The COVID pandemic has demonstrated this fact all too dramatically everywhere. Responsibilities also extend far beyond individual behaviors and interactions. During his 2013 visit to a slum in Rio de Janeiro, Pope Francis remarked on 5 responsibilities for non-material goods in relation to human rights. He said, "There is neither real promotion of the common good nor real human development when there is ignorance of the fundamental pillars that govern a nation, its non-material goods. Life, which is a gift of God, a value always due to be protected and promoted. The family, the foundation of coexistence and a remedy against social fragmentation. Integral education, which cannot be reduced to the mere transmission of information for purposes of generating profit. Health, which must seek the integral well-being of the person, including the spiritual dimension, essential for human balance and healthy coexistence. And security, in the conviction that violence can be overcome only by changing human hearts." Our third topic, address stigma and discrimination. It is abundantly clear that poor and marginalized populations are especially vulnerable to HIV and other public emergencies. A root cause for such inequalities is found in the stigma and discrimination in which many participate, consciously or unconsciously, towards those who do not fall within one's comfort zone of whatever category. The antidote, according to Pope Francis, is a culture of solidarity which holds sacred the conviction that each human being is called by God to enjoy the fullness of life. The life that we are called to promote and defend is not an abstract concept, but rather it is always manifested in a person, in flesh and blood. A baby who has just been conceived, a marginalized poor person, a sick person who is disheartened or in a terminally ill state, someone who has lost their job or cannot find one, a rejected or marginalized migrant. Life manifests itself tangibly in people. While many of us participants quickly affirm our combating stigma and discrimination in HIV/AIDS service and advocacy, we need to go further. Evidence of stigma and discrimination may be found in reactions of annoyance, rejection, ignoring another's needs. This passive hostility continues to create often insurmountable obstacles, impeding their full access to basic human services and to full integration. I remember people whom I encountered while serving at AJAN's headquarters in the Kangemi slum of Nairobi. Many were migrants from other parts of Kenya. They came in search of work in order to feed their families, and their daily struggles included constant deprivation, family conflict, indecent and unjust work conditions, and lack of education and health care. There was a high prevalence of HIV, and the Catholic Church and other faith communities tried to respond to their needs. But we rarely focused on the deeper causes that brought them to Nairobi: abject poverty, lack of decent work opportunities, or ethnic persecution and violence in their home regions. And now, here, they suffered doubly from stigma and discrimination as well. Fourthly, to build bridges of cooperation. While I was with AJAN, I participated actively in interreligious responses to HIV/AIDS. This collaboration, both local and global, has grown over many years, and it should be celebrated, expanded, and deepened. Promoting interreligious collaboration to expand the right to health care, Pope Francis and Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi, signed a declaration on global health a year ago, which stated, "Faced with diseases that today can be monitored, prevented, and eliminated, there is a need for greater efforts on the parts of all to coordinate available resources in order to achieve adequate solutions. This will also demand an interdisciplinary, socio-medical, and environmental approach." And so my appeal is, let our future collaboration, interreligious and interdisciplinary, focus on the needs of those whom we seek to serve. In conclusion, dear friends, Pope Francis's wise counsel regarding COVID-19 applies equally to the continuing HIV response as well as other global challenges. He says, to emerge from this crisis better than before, we have to do it together, not alone. Thank you, and may God bless our joint efforts and your very promising conference. Thank you.